talking about today is what happens when you have missing data in your Stata file. And I'm not going to be talking about how to handle missing data as a statistical problem. Having missing data is a statistical problem. There are many different ways to address it. You can do multiple imputation. You can do something a little bit simpler and not quite as good. But basically that's another thing. What I'm going to be talking about here is what happens when you have missing data and you're trying to manipulate your data or format your data or clean it. So let's take a look at some data that I've created right here. Very simple. I've got 6 observations. X goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 missing observations. And then I just generated some random data for Y. So the first thing to note is that Stata will obviously drop any observations that have any missing data. So if I do a regression of Y on X, I will only have 4 observations for the 4 observations that have full data. This is important to keep in mind because when you are running your analysis, you should pay attention to the difference between the number of observations in your data and the number of observations in your actual analysis. And if those don't match, you should at least know why that's happening. It should not be a surprise to you, right? If you have a data set with 10,000 observations and you run a regression and then you put out the results and you include them in your paper and it's got 10 observations in it because you didn't realize that you were dropping everybody, well, that's a problem. So that's number one thing to keep in mind. Number two thing to keep in mind is that missing data will affect creating other data or creating other variables from the data that's missing. So the important thing to remember is that in Stata, a missing observation is treated as a very large number. And there's some technical reasons for why they do that, but the important thing to remember is that it does happen. And so let's say I'm taking this X variable that I have, and I want to create a binary variable equal to 1 if, let's say, X is above 2. Okay, so I'm going to do generate X equals, or I'm going to create a variable where it's called Z. It's equal to X being above 2. Okay, so what this should do is this should give me a 0 value for the values of X that are 1 and 2. It should give me a 1 for the values that are 3 and 4. But it's also going to give me a 1 for the values that are missing, right? Because it says, oh, missing, that's a really large number. And so when I check whether this is bigger than 2, I say yes. Yes, it is. Now that's a problem, right? Clearly that's not what we want. It's even a problem if we do the other way. So let's say we're doing another variable, generate, let's say Z2 equal to X less than 2, right? So even then, I'm going to turn these into zeros, which we don't want that either. They should be missing. So a couple of different ways to do this. You could generate the variable as is and then do replace Z equals missing if X is missing. And that would fix the problem. You could also, when you're creating the first place, do it differently. So I could say generate, and this is the way that I like to do it, say generate Z3 equals to X minus less than 2, which should be the same thing as Z2 if we are not missing X. X is not equal to missing. Right, so then that will also fix the problem as well. When you're doing things like this, you need to be able to identify whether a observation is missing. So this is one way you can do it, right? X is equal to dot or period. And the period is the missing value for numerical variables. And so if we are looking at the numerical variable, and we want to check if it's missing, we can check whether it's equal to period. That does not work for strings. For strings, the missing value is 2 quotation marks with nothing in between. So if we create a new variable, let's generate a new variable that has nothing in it. That's blank. So a string variable, nothing, and then let's fill it in a little bit. Let's say this is A, B, C, D, and missing. Okay. Let's check whether they're missing. So generate check missing equal to string var is equal to quote quote. And that is exactly what we get, right? So that's the missing value. But also, probably a better way to go about this is the missing function, which works for both string and numerical variables, and so it's a little bit more flexible. So I can do generate check missing 2 equal to missing string var. Same thing, right? If you want to do the negation of that, if you want to check which ones are not missing, I would just do not missing string var. That's pretty much it. The important thing to keep in mind is A, whenever you are writing any sort of data manipulation that uses a greater than or less than, right, you need to keep in mind that it will treat missing values strangely, and you need to account for that in some way. And usually what this means is that when you're generating the variable, you'll do something like generate it only if you're not missing it, okay? Or you can replace equal to missing if the original is equal to missing. I like this version. Always reminds you to do it so you don't split up the lines or something like that. And that's it. And you can always remember this missing function as a way to do it. That's it. All right. Hope you found some use out of this.